I found my husband's secret stash of expensive gifts from a woman he's been hiding for months, and if I don't keep talking like the words are a handrail, I will sit down on the kitchen floor and label the tiles with all my feelings. I'm Margot, I'm 31, and I'm a jewelry appraiser, which is either cosmic comedy or very specific cruelty because I spend my days telling strangers what their treasures are worth while I somehow miss that my own marriage had a price tag tucked under the velvet. You'd think a jewelry appraiser would clock a diamond the way a farmer notices rain. I did not. I noticed a receipt. It was folded into eighths and lodged in the lint trap of our dryer like a tiny paper-cut secret. I tugged it free expecting coffee or maybe those socks he keeps buying that claim to be lifetime socks, as if that's not a challenge. Instead, it was from a boutique on the other side of town where the associates pronounce carat like a confession. 18K gold pave set, it read. Twin star pendant. The total made my teeth feel electrical. My husband, Theo, teaches 9th grade history. He is gentle with paper and terrible with plants. He should not be casually buying constellations. I stood there in the hum of the laundry room with the receipt stinging my finger like it had opinions. I did what I do when an appraisal is going off the rails. I made 2 columns in my notes app, facts and story, because adjectives are a bad idea on an empty stomach. Facts: receipt for expensive necklace. Theo never buys me jewelry because, quote, I'm terrified of being judged by a professional in my own house. He says this lovingly, it's almost cute. Facts continued. Necklace purchased 4 weeks ago, date circled like a birthday. Story: he bought me a surprise. I stared at the word surprise until it stopped resolving into anything kind. I put the receipt on the counter. I finished folding towels. The receipt stayed loud. Theo came home humming the theme song from some podcast about Vikings and kissed my head the way a person kisses a newborn, careful and proud. I made risotto because stirring calms my scariest brain cells. We ate at the little table by the window where we rank dogs we see on the street from earnest to management consultant. I watched his face for tremors. He made a joke about a student who tried to cite TikTok as a primary source. Normal was so persuasive I almost gaslit myself back into it. On Saturday, I went hunting for socks in his dresser and found a new lockbox at the back of the bottom drawer. If this were a movie, I would have cracked it with a hairpin and a montage, but it was one of those dumb fingerprint safes with delusions of grandeur. Theo's fingerprints were currently at the farmer's market buying heirloom carrots he will never peel properly. I shut the drawer and sat on the floor and tried not to invent a life I wasn't living. On Monday, the safe opened itself by accident. A different accident. Theo sliced his thumb on a mandolin, the instrument of domestic hubris, and yelled, and when I went to grab band-aids we somehow banged into the dresser and the drawer slid, the box jostled, and he, high on adrenaline and apology, pressed his thumb to the pad to prove he could still do anything that required a hand. The lid popped with a soft sound that I will hear in my dreams for the rest of my life. Inside was velvet. Not a metaphor. Little blue boxes and black pouches and one clear bag with a gold foil sticker so smug it tempered the air. I didn't touch anything. The top box had a tiny card, to your morning because mine starts thinking of you. C. My name does not begin with C. The necklace from the receipt lay inside, twin stars catching our kitchen light like it owed them rent. There were earrings too. Moonstones set in rose gold that looked like they had been designed to whisper on someone else's neck. A sleek bracelet you'd wear if you worked at a gallery and only drank water with lemon. A silk scarf with a pattern of moths. A lipstick in a color that would turn me into an exclamation point. Gifts in different registers, all expensive, all curated by someone who thinks clothes are sentences and getting dressed is grammar. Theo stood very still. His thumb bled politely into a wad of paper towels. He looked from the box to me like a person waking under a skylight they forgot they installed. Margot, he said, and the way he said my name reminded me of how my mother says come sit when she wants to tell me something I can't fix. Who is she? I asked. My voice did not wobble. It was a professional voice. The one I use when I have to tell someone their grandmother's brooch is not the Roman artifact their uncle swore it was. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish that has just learned there are questions. A client, he said, and flinched when he heard it. No, not. She's a woman from the Remember That Alumni Volunteer thing? The fundraising gala? She's on the committee. This is going to sound, it was never supposed to be anything. She gave me things I was going to return because it was insane, and then I kept them because I didn't know how to return a bad decision in a gift box. He looked down. I was going to tell you. People love saying that like a warranty, I said. When? He gestured at the boxes with his good hand, a sweep that could have been a confession if it had been a sentence. I didn't know how to package it, he admitted. Even in my head. I wanted drama, I got logistics. I wanted to throw every velvet square into the sink and run the disposal until we had a glittering, expensive puree, and instead I opened my notes app again because I am a coward in the shape of a cabinet. I added to facts, multiple gifts, different dates, card initial C added to story, the moment my body learned a new temperature. We Saturday. The box Saturday. Our cat, who is aggressively neutral, jumped onto the table and tried to sit in the lid because she respects rituals. I watched my husband, a man who organizes the spice rack alphabetically and cries at commercials where dogs find their way home, try to assemble a narrative that didn't indict him and didn't insult me. He failed. That counts as a kind of success. C is Claire, he said finally. She's a donor. She runs an event space and has that slick way of talking like a TED Talk in a cashmere turtleneck. She cornered me after I gave a speech about why ninth graders care about the Boston Tea Party more when you hand them actual leaves. She said it was refreshing to hear a teacher sound alive. She asked if I ever felt invisible. I said something vulnerable and boring like only on Tuesdays, and she laughed like she had a secret and it would be kind to share it. Did you sleep with her? I asked clinically. He shook his head too fast to be acting. No, he said. We texted. She sent things. I didn't stop it. I told myself I didn't deserve nice things, so it wasn't really a danger. That logic is gross. I hear it. He swallowed. I put them in the box because they felt like a lobby I didn't want to walk through. And then I went in anyway. Why keep them? I asked, because I needed a verb. He looked miserable and honest in the way men get when the room stops cooperating. Because throwing them out felt like an admission, he said. And returning them felt like a performance. And keeping them felt like I could somehow compartmentalize the worst version of me into a cube. That's not how anything works. He pressed the paper towel harder to his thumb. I am not the villain in a novel. I am a tired idiot in a kitchen. The thing about appraising is you learn the difference between value and story. Provenance is everything, but it isn't the whole thing. Here was a box of pretty, backed by a woman who liked to hire her own echoes and a man who had leaned toward the compliment like a plant in a winter window. I could make this into a movie with tables flipped and someone dramatically shoving a suitcase into a cab. Or I could turn it into a spreadsheet with columns labeled then and next. I chose the latter because I wanted to sleep this year. Okay, I said, not because it was, but because we needed a word to lean against. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to text Claire while I watch you and you're going to say in English that this stops. No adjectives. You're going to take a photo of this box and send it and say you will return or dispose of everything and that any response other than understood will make me pursue legal remedy through the school if necessary because donor boundary issues are a liability. Then you're going to email your principal and say you've had inappropriate donor contact. You will not make this sound glamorous. You will not use the word slippery slope like you expect extra credit. Then you're going to pack a bag and go stay at Miles's because I already texted him and he said his couch owes me a favor. And you'll schedule a therapist who has a license and not a newsletter. And for the next 2 weeks you will send me receipts, not poems. He winced at the principal part like I expected. Men can handle the apocalypse but not HR. Do you want to? He began and I shook my head. I'm the one who deals with paperwork in this house. Give me the dignity of not doing yours. He nodded. He texted. Claire's dots flashed, disappeared, flashed, then settled into a single sentence. You're making a mistake. I took his phone and typed, I made one. I'm fixing it. I blocked her and set the phone face down like I was tucking it in. When he left with a duffel and his mandolin-wounded thumb, the apartment felt like a breathing thing that had been holding its breath. I made tea the way you do at funerals. I carried the box to my work table because I needed to weigh the lie. I opened every pouch and every lid. I catalogued an illegal pad column the way I do at my job, except this inventory had a column for rage. I wrote down carat weights and metal types and maker's marks, and then next to each I wrote the feeling it stuck like a pin into my skin. Shame, humor, those moths, fury, grief, that weird warm recognition that expensive things are beautiful sometimes even when they are contaminated. I called Maya. Everyone needs a Maya. She arrived with salted chocolate and an expression like she'd been training for my call with a weighted vest. She read my list and said, "I love you. Also, I will steal the moth scarf for evidence if that serves the plot." We set the scarf around the cat, who looked like a judge. We laughed, because that is how women unstick their throats without throwing plates. Then we did what women also do when the world tries to throw glitter in their eyes. We got boring. We made a plan titled Next because I couldn't handle future. The plan had bullets. He would disclose to the school, we would document. He would find therapy, I would too. He would do a digital audit, accounts, messages, paper trail, then hand it to me like a tray. We would do a transparent budget because money is a mirror, not a prop. We would agree to a boundary set labeled dignity. No late-night phone glow, no vague calendar entries, no forgot to mention us. We would schedule a weekly State of the Union meeting with an actual timer, because we love each other and we also love to filibuster. He followed most of it like a student who wants to pass the class. He told his principal, who looked relieved to be handling a sin that came with receipts and not an allegation that would require police. He found a therapist named Leon who wears cardigan armor and calls avoidance creative cowardice, which Theo wrote on a sticky note and put next to his toothbrush where I would see it and hate him less. He sent me screenshots of cancelled contact, proofs of returned packages, a photo of him at Miles's apartment washing dishes with a competence that made me irrationally jealous of Miles's dish rack. Claire mailed me a letter because of course she did. Thick cream paper, a scent like expensive disappointment. "You don't know what you're holding him back from," she wrote. "He is bigger than your small life." I put the letter in a Ziploc bag like a forensic tech and dropped it in a drawer next to old warranties and a ball of twine. It is strange, the power of filing something properly. It loses its costume and becomes paper you keep for later, for court or a bonfire or a laugh, whichever day comes first. 2 weeks later, Theo came over for the first of our State of the Unions. He brought curry and an apology that did not try to audition for a prize. We sat across from each other like people who have both learned new definitions for the word marriage. We used the timer. In my turn, I said, "I am furious in a way that makes me good at taxes." I said, "I feel ordinary and I love feeling ordinary, and that is not something you get to hold against me." I said, "You do not get to call this a midlife crisis when you are not even mid." In his turn, he said, "I wanted to feel part of a myth and forgot that we already had one called Thursday." He said, "Praise is a drug." I took it like sugar cubes when I should have eaten an actual meal. He said, "I am sorry," in a way that will be visible on the budget. We made a few unsexy rules. Shared calendars that actually share. Phones in a basket at 9 p.m. unless there is blood. Quarterly money meeting where we ask, "What are we building?" and then fund it, not with declarations, with dollars. We agreed that I would be allowed to be bored by him sometimes without him seeking novelty like a tourist. He agreed that he would be allowed to not be impressive around me and still be wanted. The gifts, I took those to work. Not to sell, not yet. To do what I'm trained to do, verify. I weighed them. The star pendant was what it claimed. The moonstones were too fragile for a daily life, which felt symbolic, but I refused to be that kind of woman in a novella. I wrapped each piece in tissue and then in narrative for myself. A tag on each that said either returned with receipt, donated, or salvaged. Donated items went to a charity auction that funds housing for women leaving situations where gifts were the leash. I kept none for myself. I won't wear a story that thinks it won. One of the pieces, the scarf which the cat had claimed as a nap mat, I mailed back to Claire's business address with a note, "We return what doesn't belong to us." No signature. Petty? Maybe. But I sleep on a pillow that fits my head, and petty is sometimes its own melatonin. We tried. That is the unremarkable truth. There were days I wanted to leave because the air around him felt like static. There were days he wanted to leave because the air around me felt like a courtroom. We scheduled one day a week called Dirt Day, where we literally gardened a small patch of the yard we had ignored and talked about nothing large. We learned how to make gnocchi and how to say "I hate this feeling" without adding "you" automatically. He read a book about addiction that did not apply exactly and made us both cry anyway. I noticed he began letting students see him fail at the whiteboard, and he told me it made him less obsessed with getting gold stars from grown women with perfect hair. 3 months in, he asked, in a voice that was not a trick, if he could move home. I said yes, with conditions like a lease. He signed them with what people call actions. He has stayed boring in the most delicious ways since. He makes our bed with corners like he believes mornings might need help. He buys me flowers from the bodega because peonies are nice, but bodega bouquets are democracy. He has not become a saint. I would have to move out if he did. Sometimes I still imagine Claire in her cashmere feeling wronged, like she had auditioned for the role of Destiny and did not get the callback. Sometimes I am tempted to look at her feed. Of course she posts, of course she is lit like a late afternoon, and then I don't, not because I am noble but because I like my mornings more when my stomach is not full of strangers. Sometimes in the shower I think about the star pendant and my mouth tastes like metal, and then I think about the women who bid on those donated earrings and how the money helped a person pay a deposit on an apartment when no one will throw romance at her like a leash, and I wash my hair and call it a good day. If you are me from the laundry room, hunched over a dryer with a receipt trying to rewrite your marriage in 8 folded squares, here's what I would slip into your pocket. Write down your facts before your fear drafts the novel. Ask for verbs, not confessions that have been to a seminar. Inventory your life and then decide what you want to keep. Choose one friend who loves you more than she loves drama and make her sit at your table and eat salted chocolate and help you label your rage in a way that stacks. Let there be paperwork. Paperwork is not unromantic, it is how lives continue. Tonight, I'm on the couch under a blanket that has survived 4 apartments and 1 catastrophic dye experiment. Theo is at the table grading essays about turning points in American history, and every so often he reads a line aloud like a kid who has found a quarter. This one says the turning point was when someone decided they didn't like tea, he says, and I laugh and he looks at me like the joke landed and that is enough. On the shelf above the desk sits a small empty velvet box, the only one I kept, not because I wanted the box but because I wanted the emptiness. It reminds me that a container is not a crime, what you put in it is. He looks up and catches me staring. You okay, he asks, and I think about that stupid little safe and the way the lid popped and how I felt my heart leave my body and then come back because that's what you train it to do. I am, I say. Are you? He nods. He means it. It is not poetry, it is a report. We promised nothing forever tonight. We promised groceries tomorrow and our time on Wednesday and to fix the wobbly chair this weekend and to say this hurts when it does. I put my feet on his lap. He makes that happy noise people make when something soft lands against them. We watch a terrible baking show where everyone cries about meringue, and I think maybe this is the treasure, how we learn to appraise again not the carrots and the gleam but the plainness that keeps showing up with its sleeves rolled, sweeping the kitchen, making room.